I thought the hardest part of a career change would be taking the first step. It's not. You've heard me talk about moving to Germany without a job, pivoting to Singapore, landing my dream role at Spotify. And those stories are true, every single one. But here's what I haven't shared yet. What it actually feels like on the other side of a big career change. Not the highlight reel, but real messy, sometimes confusing, sometimes lonely truths. Because I recently made the biggest leap of my life. I left corporate to launch Chasing Waves. And I love what I'm doing. I don't question the choice. But do I sometimes wonder, is this actually going to work? Yeah, I do. I'm Joanna, your host of Chasing Waves, and today I'm letting you in a little bit more than usual. And I think it's fitting that this episode is coming out on World Health Day, because when we talk about career changes, we talk about strategy and finances and resumes, but we almost never talk about what it does to you inside. I should tell you, I wrote the bones of this episode about 2 months ago, when I was really in the thick of all of this. I've turned those lessons into something I hope makes your transition a little easier than mine was. I started calling it the WAVES framework. 5 things nobody warns you about in a big career change. WAVES. Watch yourself, anchor, vulnerability, evolve, and spark. Let me walk you through each one. W stands for watch yourself. How you show up after a career change will surprise you. Some people push way too hard. Some people freeze. And underneath that, usually it's fear of failure. That you're not good enough, not fast enough, not ready. The key is to notice it and give yourself permission to work differently than before. For me, I became the worst boss I've ever had. I used to manage a team of people from Japan, India, to Australia. I hope I was a good boss, supportive, encouraging, patient. And then I started working for myself, and the expectations I put on myself were intense. Something that takes 3 hours instead of 30 minutes, immediately, you're not good enough. The difference between how I treated my team and how I treated myself is honestly shocking. I think a lot of high achievers will relate. We're kind to others, brutal to ourselves. And when you're working alone, with no one to calibrate against, those internal standards can get loud. And here's the tricky part. That drive can be great when you're building something new. It gets you through the early chaos, the steep learning curves, the long days. But if you let it run unchecked, it will burn you out. I had 12 podcast episodes mapped out before I even launched. Yes, that happened. And as much as I appreciate having them, I honestly just didn't need all of that so soon. And here's what I figured out. That relentless inner voice, do more, go faster, you're behind. It's not the enemy. It got me here. It just wasn't meant to run the show anymore. What I actually needed in this chapter is a different version of me. Someone who can set the pace and say, that's enough for today, without guilt, and sit with the uncertainty without spiraling. So if this sounds familiar, be kind to yourself. You don't need to fight it. You just need to let something gentler take the lead. And honestly, going through all of this is exactly why I became a coach. Not because I have it all figured out, but because I sat on the discomfort, done the work, and come out the other side understanding it differently. When I work with my clients, I'm not getting them advice from a textbook. I've lived it, and I think that's what makes the conversations real. A is for anchor. When everything is changing, you need to stabilize what matters most to you. Because there's a fear nobody talks about. The fear of being lost. Of not knowing who you are when you strip away the title, the team, the routine. When you leave a company, you don't just lose a job. You lose your identity, your community, your sense of belonging. We're wired for that. It's not a nice to have. It's a need. For me, this was the hardest one. I'm an extrovert, surprise. Daily interaction was my fuel. And suddenly, it was just me, working from home 5 days a week. I love the work, but the silence in between, it was not working. And it's not just you who has to adjust. My husband had to learn a whole new version of me. Some days I'd be buzzing with excitement about an episode idea. Other days I'd be quiet and frustrated. He had to figure out when to encourage, when to just listen, and when to pour the wine and just change the subject. This kind of change doesn't just happen to you. It happens to the people who love you too. So I got intentional. I joined a social club here in Singapore and started a small community of like-minded women through a Facebook group. Sounds simple, but finding these foundations, so important. These became my anchors when everything else was in flux. Your version might look different. Maybe it's accountability, or structure, or just one person who checks in on you weekly. The point is, know what keeps you grounded. Build it into your week before you realize it's missing. V is for vulnerability. You're going to want to do everything yourself, especially if you're a high achiever, especially if your identity is built around being capable. But why take that road alone when you don't have to? I went from managing 25 people to me, myself, and I. And because I'm an overachiever, my first instinct was, I can handle all of this. I'm an independent woman, right? Terrible idea. Luckily, former teammates offered their own free time to help me get this podcast off the ground. A friend in the US I hadn't spoken to in ages gave up his evenings to teach me about camera angles and lighting. I mean, it had complete strangers give up their time to help me, and I've done the same for others. Before I launched, I had people listen and give me honest feedback. That vulnerability, tell me what you really think, made everything better. Not everyone will say yes, but you'd be surprised how many people will. Friends, family, former colleagues, even people you haven't talked to in years. You could still be an independent person and lean on Kike too. You just have to ask. It's okay to be vulnerable sometimes. E is for evolve. You're going to go from expert to beginner overnight. And it will mess with your confidence in ways you don't expect. Because when you spent your whole career good at what you do, not being good at something feels personal. In corporate, I knew exactly who I was. I had a title people understood, a skill set built over nearly 20 years, a reputation. I walked into rooms with confidence because I earned my seat. And then I started over, recording a podcast, editing audio, recording video. Things that should take 30 minutes took 3 hours. I went from being the person with the answers to the person Googling, how do I use this latest AI tool? But the second time, 3 hours became 2.5, then 2. Then one day you realize, I actually kind of know what I'm doing. That feeling is amazing. Be kind to yourself through the messy part. Every spill you pick up stakes with you. Nothing is wasted. And the last one, S is for spark. Some days, you'll wonder if it's worth it. On those days, come back to this. The people you meet and the things you discover about yourself are the answer. Since starting this journey, I've met the most fascinating people. A podcaster who hosts live ghost stories every Friday night. How cool is that? Someone I hadn't seen in 10 years whose wife owns a snail farm in Singapore. Everyone has the most beautiful, unexpected journeys. And you don't typically get to hear about them when you're just going through the motions in your day-to-day in an office. And coaching. Watching someone reach that aha moment, sometimes it's small, sometimes it's life-changing. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced. There's a kind of freedom in this chapter. Permission to dream. Permission to be curious about things that have nothing to do with success metrics. And on the days when that quiet voice creeps in, but will you really make it? I come back to moments like these. Because even if I don't know exactly where this goes, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. Whatever your career change looks like, if it's calling out to you, it's calling out to you for a reason. If there's one thing I want you to take away for today, it's this. Everything I just shared, the hard parts, the good parts, the messy middle. It all comes down to five things. Ways. W, so watch yourself. Sometimes you'll push too hard. Sometimes you'll freeze. Both are normal. Just notice it and give yourself permission to do things differently than before. A is for anchor. You're not just leaving a job. You're losing routines, community, belonging. Find ways to stabilize what matters most to you. V for vulnerability. You'll want to do it all alone. Yo, ask for help. You'd be surprised how many people will say yes. E for evolve. One day you're the expert, next day you're a beginner again. That's humbling, but stay with it. Every new skill sticks with you. And finally, S for spark. Some days you'll wonder if it's worth it. Keep going. The people you meet and the things you discover about yourself are the answer. If you've been feeling any of this, I want you to know you're not alone. This part of a career change is normal. It just doesn't get talked about enough. And when no one tells you, it's easy to think something's wrong with you, that you're the only one who feels lost in the middle of something you chose. But you're not. And since I told you at the beginning that the bones of this was from a couple of months ago, let me give you an update. Chasing Waves was featured in Honeycombers. I was interviewed by Business Insider. And the podcast hit #2 in careers on Apple Podcasts. 2 months ago, I couldn't have told you any of that was coming. But it moved because I kept going. So here's my challenge to you. What's the one thing you need to anchor first? Name it. Take one step toward it. Just one. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Joanna. Let's go chase that wave.